the International Space Station. Some say the very future of our species hinges on the important scientific research being conducted up there right now, as we speak. Perhaps it is this very belief that has enabled such an impressive collaboration amongst nations who not long ago were fierce enemies. Maybe you've even seen it streaking across the night sky at more than 17,000 miles per hour. I've seen it. In fact, we saw it just over 2 months ago from a very special place we're going to tell you about today. And while pondering its magnificence, we couldn't help but also wonder, with such brilliance at the fingertips of humanity, why is it that so many of us still feel like something is missing? As evidenced by this $100 billion masterpiece, the culprit is clearly not science. In fact, we believe it's quite the opposite.
You see, we live in a world that encourages numbness. Just about everywhere on the planet, societal and cultural norms regulate and even suppress the ability of each of us to truly experience what it means to be human. There are rules regarding eye contact, maintaining personal spaces, fine nuances to the well-defined handshake. We don't cry in public. We don't tell our coworkers how we feel. Often we don't tell our closest friends or relatives for fear of being a burden or being labeled emotional. A friend of ours was recently at a funeral, having lost his young niece to suicide, and a family member actually told him to stop crying. And so our emotions go, forced down, unexpressed. It's not our fault. We're immersed in a vicious cycle of learned behaviors that has been going on for generations.
As individuals and communities, we are in desperate need of places where it is safe for us to express and process our deep emotions, to be vulnerable. What if having such a place were all we needed to begin changing this vicious cycle? Well, we believe such a place exists, and what's fascinating is that it first came to be just weeks before this space station was launched into orbit in the year 2000. Back then, a man named David Best was planning to build an art structure at a festival called Burning Man. This isn't just any festival, listen. Earlier this year, Time magazine recognized this event as one of civilization's 100 most important sites. Back then, David Best lost a close friend unexpectedly in a motor vehicle accident. So, as an expression of his grief, he dedicated his art structure as a shrine in his friend's memory. During the event, people came and visited the structure and deeply connected with that shrine, resonating with the common human experience of loss. So since then, a new shrine has been built every year and has come to be known as the temple. We believe this temple marks a paradigm shift in how communities view and support public expression of profound emotion.
Having experienced the wonder and ritual of previous temples, a group of us were at this gathering last year and decided that we wanted a chance to express our reverence for the temple and for our community. We wanted to build this year's temple. We call ourselves the International Arts Mega Crew. Our build lead, Chris Hankins, goes by Kiwi. He's from New Zealand. And our art director, Dermot Horkin, who goes by Irish, is from Ireland. Jaya and I are Canadian, and our crew of 180 represents 17 different countries. And our goal this year was to be the first international crew ever to build this temple. This is a testament to how important we feel this temple is, not only to the state in which it is built, but to our global community. Belonging to this crew was a sacrifice. People left jobs, family members, and their home countries to dedicate weeks, and in most cases months, in service to this project, and all with no pay. And while astronauts dwell in a temporary home amongst the stars, we too gathered in a temporary home in an isolated piece of land called the Black Rock Desert.
During the last ice age, this inhospitable desert was a lake. All the remains of the lake is now fine dust, so alkaline it can burn your skin with prolonged exposure. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit and is extremely dry, making dehydration a serious threat. Sun-strong winds can create whiteout conditions, so face masks and goggles are essential to survive.
Long before heading out into the desert, though, we had a tremendous amount of work to do. To begin with, we needed to design a temple. So if you were given the task of designing a temple, where would you start? That's right, we Googled it. We wanted photos of temples from around the world, focusing on architectural styles and features that appealed to us, and also taking note of important geometric concepts that have recurred throughout the ages across all cultures and all religions in spiritual structures. It took us 2 months to come up with the basic sketches, and in fact, there would not just be one temple, but 6. We then needed to convert our crude drawings into a workable 3-dimensional model. And then we needed to turn that model into realizable plans. Not only did the plans need to be structurally sound, we had been told we would only have 2 weeks in the desert to assemble what had taken 2 months just to design. And keep in mind the nature of our crew. I'm a physiotherapist by trade, and Jaya works in hospitality, and many more of us had never even been on a build site, let alone left the safe metric lives that we live in and ventured into a world measured in feet and inches. And keep in mind that most of us had never even met face to face, let alone worked together.
This wasn't turning out to be just any building. It was big. If we were going to build a temple in the middle of a desert and make a pilgrimage to get there, we wanted the size of our temple to reflect its relevance to our global community. Therefore, the entire installation would span nearly an acre of land, and the Temple of Gratitude in the center was measured at 122 feet. That's 10 stories tall. Not only that, what's that? Not only that, Erin's going to remind me that it weighed 92,000 pounds. So it gets better. We had to build this whole structure without a foundation. Now, remember how I said this desert was once a lake? Well, every winter enough precipitation does flow into the area to create what's basically a massive mud pond. As summer comes and this mud dries up, what you're left with is not unlike a bowl of pudding that's been left out in the sun. It's got a hard skin on top with the mud underneath. You heard me right. 92,000 pounds on top of a bowl of pudding. Oh, and we also had to contend with 75-mile-per-hour winds. We had to do this right because the very safety of our tens of thousands of visitors was at stake.
We were going to need over 750,000 nails. We were also going to need over 1,700 sheets of plywood and over 50,000 linear feet of lumber, all Sustainable Forestry Initiative certified, by the way. That doesn't even begin to cover the rebar, the lighting equipment, the paint, heavy equipment, and food and water and tools for 180 people. And we had to get it out to the middle of nowhere, and this was going to require over 24 semi-trailers. In other words, we were going to need some serious financial support. And we're living in unstable economic times. Who has money to give? And even if they did, who would choose to support an art structure? Well, I can tell you, those who do choose to support this are not all people who can afford to donate, but they are people who believe they can't afford not to. Tens of thousands have visited temples in previous years, and everyone who visits leaves a different person than when they came. This place is sacred. This place is a vital antidote to the numbness.
When we gathered at the site in early August, there we were, a hodgepodge of committed individuals staring at a bunch of wood sitting in piles in the desert. Did we really have the skills and resources to build a structure of this size? More than one of us had our quiet doubts, and we weren't alone. Upon arrival, we learned festival organizers would only let us build 3 of the 5 planned outer temples, unless we could prove ourselves capable of the entire project. So we got to work, and once we started, we literally did not stop. We worked through the hottest hours of the day, some days putting in as much as 20-hour shifts. We skipped meals and sometimes only slept 4 or 5 hours each night in service to this project.
Why would we do this? There are so many reasons to explain our frantic and passionate commitment to this project, but they all fall under 2 primary motives: us and you. First, we all had the opportunity to develop our skills as a builder, a rigger, an artist, a chance to write something great on a resume or to be a part of something really big. But the second reason, though, was service to others. Back home, we've all experienced the numbness, the disconnect, the isolation. We wanted a chance not only to overcome this in ourselves, we wanted to give other people an opportunity for these same deep transformations.
Just 3 days before the event started, event organizers finally gave us approval to build the remaining 2 towers. Our dusty, tattered, and tired crew released this cheer that reverberated in my bones. There was this tremendous sense of accomplishment, accompanied by the sick realization how much work still remained. We were literally in a race against time.
Just hours before the event was officially to start, we were still at it. It felt as though we would never finish, and yet, nail after nail, relentlessly, we kept working. The day prior, I had spent nearly 2 solid hours weeping as I worked, in part from exhaustion, yet in part due to this overwhelming beauty that was starting to unfold before us. The concept of synergy to me doesn't even come close to describing how much greater the total was than the sum of its parts.
At midnight, they called us all together and announced that we were done. And there before us, the Temple of Transition stood enormously above the largest stretch of flat land in the Northern Hemisphere. It may be hard to believe at this point, but this story was only just beginning. See, what the temple needed now was people to give it life. And at midnight, they were already beginning to arrive.
So what exactly do people do when they come to visit the temple? David Best describes our emotional burdens as heavy stones we carry with us through our lives. So difficult to let go of because they represent our most painful experiences and also our dearest memories. Lost loved ones, the brother you haven't spoken to in 6 years, the shame you carry for how you treated a friend, the hopes for your small children, all of it. So you have to take this stone on a pilgrimage, a long journey to the middle of an inhospitable environment where your body becomes dehydrated, disheveled, dirty, and only when your body reaches this point of utter exhaustion, then you can come to the temple. And here, you let it go. And what you let go of becomes an offering, a gift to others, giving them permission to do the same. We went back to the temple the next morning, and I cannot tell you how humbling it was to witness what we saw there.
We built this temple as those before us had built temples, to create a safe and sacred place for people to grieve, love themselves, find forgiveness. Having served its ultimate purpose, there was now only one way to truly honor all that had been offered here. So in the silence, in the closeness of that Sunday night sway, we watched destruction gift creation with what it took away. The towers lit by flames, sparks dancing in the air, built by hands not attached to lasting more than 1 week there. The hard work and the tears, each arch packed full with prayers. We were a city with an offering, 50,000 souls laid bare.
Whether working at the frontiers of science or of ritual, nothing lasts forever. In fact, even the International Space Station is scheduled to see its demise in 2016 when it is deorbited. Thousands of researchers, diplomats, and astronauts will watch their years of work come plummeting to the Earth, crashing through the atmosphere. Will this signify the end of science? Of course not. In fact, tomorrow night, children around the world will watch in wonder as the next expedition launches towards the space station, and they'll dream of a day when they too can travel to outer space and conduct research that can change the world. As adults, too often we ground ourselves in the belief that chances to impact civilization are rare and require years of specialized education, an astronomical budget, cutting-edge technology, and a genius stroke of luck.
But we implore you to reconsider this. Our crew accomplished in a very short period of time something that we feel is changing civilization. Clearly, it's not rocket science, but it was the tallest stick-frame, foundationless wooden structure on the planet. It was an international crew, and while most of us do not possess PhDs, we were equally driven by a deep sense of service to humanity. And what we chose to build is unique to civilization, being a secular temple, and one specifically built to burn.
Imagine a world where everyone had the chance to feel, truly feel, their inner space. What would that world look like? We believe that individuals and communities would thrive in this world. Now imagine a place where your dreams of making the world a better place drive your daily behaviors and are leveraged through existing technologies and collaboration with others who share your dreams. What we have learned is that that world already exists. What are you doing tomorrow? Thank you.